Hi, Mike here with Dawg TV Adventures, and this is the next part of our backpacking series. The next thing I want to cover is basic food items and menu planning. So, one of the things that we usually do is we have a series of foods that we like that we tend to bring on backpacking trips, and we do some variations of those, but it's very similar. And depending on your taste, you're going to need to find things that work for you that keep. And so the other thing that you need to be concerned with at all times, of course, is weight. So if you're actually backpacking, not going in for an overnight, you have to think about weight because you're going to have all of that food packed into your pack. So one of the things that that keeps for a long time are eggs. Eggs keep for a long time. You can get a plastic egg carton for them that will protect the eggs. You can actually stick them in there, and without refrigeration, you can keep eggs for days and cook them up when you want them and so forth. And so, I had a lot of people who don't backpack who have no idea about the word science or anything else that requires an education. Ask me, Mike, how do you know that eggs, keep for a long time? Well, you can look it up on the internet because Google knows everything. Or you can realize that when the chicken poops out that egg, what happens with it? Does it just pop into a chicken? No, it has to sit there, right? And it sits there for days, and it doesn't rot, meaning bacteria doesn't get in there and it doesn't go bad, which would kill the embryo. So somehow it's got to survive for a long period of time without going bad, without becoming a bad egg, so to speak. And the way that happens is that the shell protects it, and as well as the chicken actually coats it with a coating which the idiots wash off in the processing plant, so they don't keep as long as they would if they didn't wash it off. But anyway, it's designed to not go bad for some extended period of time so the chicken can develop into, or the embryo can develop into a chicken. So if you take some eggs with you that are fresh and you're only going to keep them for a few days, maybe you'll eat them on the first few days of your trip, you leave them in the shade and so forth so that they don't get overheated or something, they'll be fine. But eggs weigh a lot, and so, they would keep longer, like I said, if they didn't wash it off, but our idiot regulators require that chicken eggs be washed, which is why they don't keep quite as long. So what are you going to bring if you're not going to bring something heavy like that? You're probably going to bring dehydrated foods and other types of foods that are not as heavy. So a lot of times on a trip we'll bring at least 1 or 2 pieces of actual fruit. I mean, not dehydrated, apple, something like that. But you can't bring 8 days, 9 days worth of that kind of food because your pack would weigh a ton. So a lot of stuff has got to be dehydrated. So for breakfast, a lot of times we just eat oatmeal. I like oatmeal for breakfast. It essentially comes dehydrated, so you bring rolled oats, some sort of oatmeal, and you can put some freeze-dried fruit in it, heat it up, and you got breakfast. We bring hot chocolate usually for the breakfast, and Andra brings coffee, so we can have something warm in the morning. So oatmeal, maybe some fruit, and hot chocolate, and that's my breakfast. For dinner, a lot of times we bring Mountain House Pro Packs, which you just add water to, they rehydrate, you're good to go. And for snacks and things like that in the evening, desserts, we'll bring cashews or GORP or things like that. Somebody asked me the other day what GORP is. I forget that there's a lot of people without any backpacking experience or any experience whatsoever outside of the little box they live in. But GORP stands for Good Old Raisins and Peanuts, and is common term for us backpackers when we refer to trail mix, which has other things now besides raisins and peanuts. But back in the old days, you made your own. You threw some raisins in, peanuts, and that was it. That was your trail mix. And then they got fancier and fancier, and now they got frou-frou this and that in it for the wackadoodles that come from the city. So, you can have some sort of snack foods to go with your dinner besides dehydrated food. For lunch, we don't bring dehydrated food for lunch, not in the traditional sense anyway. Stopping for lunch and boiling water to rehydrate food is a big pain in the neck. And a lot of times you're going from one location to the other, you're stopping late, you want to eat your lunch and continue on and get to your base camp. So things we bring for lunch are salami, jerky, cheese, which keeps perfectly fine for a week-long trip as long as you keep it cool. Like I said, don't leave your stuff out in the sun. bread, bagels work fine. I make my own tough bread that my mom used to make that backpacks well. Various things like nuts and fruits and dehydrated fruits and stuff like that you can add in there. And so think about those types of things. You can take protein bars with you, Cliff bars, and other types of items that you can just pop open and eat. So when you're on the go during the day, you don't want to have to stop, break out your stove, unpack your pack, and get your fuel out or whatever, or build a fire, get your pot out, and make food. So for lunch, it's always on-the-go food. And so you think about that kind of thing. On shorter trips, you can bring heavier items like more real fruit. I've taken frozen steaks in for the first night or two, which are fine. But when you're going on a long trip, taking those kind of items are a little bit on the heavy side. And then food storage. So when you have all that food with you, you've got to prevent critters from getting into it. Now, the National Park Service will tell you bear this, bear that, bear this, make sure it's bear-proof, and on and on and on and on. Your biggest threat is not bears, and that's because the National Park Service has their own agenda. Most of them are morons. But this is a bear-proof container, so you can put your food in there, screw the lid on, and it's going to be safe from bears, but more importantly, it's going to be safe from squirrels, which are the most likely to tear all your food apart, scatter it all over your camp, and now you're 2 days from your car and you got nothing but stuff in the dirt. So the biggest thing you need to worry about is marmots, squirrels, chipmunks, those kind of things. Birds, crows will tear everything apart. So you want to get your food into a canister like this, or you want to hang it in a tree inside of a pack. And so the more and more areas in the People's Republic of Taxifornia require a bear canister because they assume you're too stupid to be able to hang your food properly, and the bear's going to get to it anyway. And of course, most liberals who go backpacking are too stupid. They'll hang their food at 6 feet above the ground thinking that bears can't reach up and get it. They also don't hang the food far enough away from the tree because they think bears can't climb trees. They can, especially black bears. They're extremely adept at climbing a tree that needs to be hung, at least 4 feet out from the base of the tree, and then on a limb that it's hanging down from, because if the limb is substantial, they'll crawl out on it and they'll grab your food that way. So it needs to be out and down from the limb so they can't get to it, and it should be at least 12 feet up. 14 feet is better from the ground. So when you're hanging food, you need to make sure it's hung appropriately, and in some areas they require you to take a bear canister by law. Yosemite is one of them. Hoover National Wilderness just a year ago or so changed to match Yosemite, which really pissed me off. But these are convenient. They weigh a little over a pound. So when you start out a trip for 8-9 days, you can't get all of your food in this. So I usually hang it, the food that doesn't fit. But as the trip goes on, eventually I don't have to find a tree. I don't have to try and get my stuff up there. I can just throw it in this. And again, critically important, keep it in the shade. So your bread is going to mold. Cheese is going to get all melted and disgusting. So if you want your food to be tasty and fresh, you just need to keep it in the shade. In the high Sierras, it's usually relatively cool in the shade, and at night it gets very cold. So your food will keep just fine as long as you don't leave it in the sun. The one thing you don't want to store in something like this is DEET. This is the old version. We have newer ones that we bought a couple of years ago for our Alaska trip, and it says right on there, etched on the lid, no DEET. So it ruins the plastic, so don't put your DEET in there. But pretty much anything that smells, your shampoos, your soap, your toothpaste, your food, anything like that, it's got to go in here. Don't leave anything in your pack that smells. Don't take anything that smells into your tent ever, no matter what it is, because once you smell it up, then the next trip something's going to go in there looking for it. They'll tear your tent up. You'll get back to camp. They won't have found anything because you didn't actually leave anything in there during that trip, but you still have a hole in it, and you get to sleep with the mosquitoes. And also, when you leave your pack, excuse me, and it's empty, open up all the pouches. This has to be open, all the side pouches, this has to be open, everything has to be open. And the reason is that squirrels and chipmunks, they don't know there's nothing in there, and it does kind of smell like food because you had food in it. So they're going to want to investigate. And if you zip the pouches closed, even though they're empty, they're going to burrow holes in it, tear it all to pieces to try and get in there, realize there's nothing there. So when you leave your pack, it's got to be completely unzipped and open. So not closed up, all zipped up tight. So that kind of covers the basics on food storage. As far as where to place this, if you're in black bear country, you want to get it away from your tent and your camp a little bit so that they don't come milling about in the evening. If you're in grizzly country, it's a whole different story. So if you're in grizzly country, they recommend 100 yards. That's 300 feet, or about the length of a football field. You also want to keep a clean camp. That means that if you have a campfire and you cook next to it and everything else, your tent is not there. Your tent is 100 yards off. So you're cooking, if you've been fishing, you're cleaning fish, all that's got to be done eons from where you're going to be sleeping. So you don't want to have any trash, anything that's going to attract grizzly bears to your camp. And this, even though they can't get into it, smells, and bears have better noses than dogs, and they're going to smell it and come to investigate. And you don't want them investigating your tent, you want them investigating it 100 yards off. So in those kind of conditions, you want it to be quite a ways off. In black bear country, where it's not as big a risk, you still want to get it away from your tent, away from your camp, in the shade, someplace where you can get to it, but it's not going to draw any kind of animals right into camp. So that's the food storage thing, and then we'll be off to the final segment.